Alright, welcome back ladies and gentlemen to the Chupacabra tutorials channel. I'm your host Larry, and today we are back to look at another Photoshop tutorial, this one specifically aimed at lightening the dark circles that form under people's eyes for a number of different reasons. And it's really helpful because you can touch up your family photos, professional photos, what have you, so that you can kind of lighten up the area under and around someone's eyes without having to either have them put on makeup or anything else of that nature when you're taking photos. So I just grabbed this photo for free off of Google Images. If you just type in dark circles around eyes, you usually find a whole swath of different models that you can grab. So just grab one that you like and we'll start to look at how you can do different things with a couple different methods of lightening the eyes. The first one we're going to do is using the model's own skin tone and the clone stamp tool in order to blend together the natural tones over top of the eyes. Because basically, no matter what we do, you're going to be painting the area around the eyes either with a curves layer, a clone stamp tool, or something else. So let's go ahead and take the clone stamp by hitting S. It's over here. It literally looks like an old school, like dip it in ink and then stamp a piece of paper stamp right here. And then I'm going to just target the area of her skin that looks kind of like a nice natural mid-tone. I'm going to make a new layer over here in the layers panel with this plus symbol button down here to make a new layer. That way, if I mess something up, I'm not destroying our original layer. And then up here at the top, for the clone stamp options, I'm making sure that it samples current and below, or you could also do all layers, but I like current and below, because if you have something on top of that layer, it won't mess it up. So from here, we're just going to start blending. It also helps if you have a soft brush, so it kind of naturally blends it together. We're just going to grab that kind of mid-tone color, and then we're going to go ahead and start painting. And so you just kind of want to take it a little bit at a time to paint around her eye, trying not to paint her nose into the middle of the work, because you can literally, with this tool, repaint a whole copy of her eye in the middle of her cheek if you're not careful. And then we're just going to slowly paint any of the areas around either of these eyes that we think could use a little lightening. And don't worry about kind of overlapping her eye too much, because you can always clean that up with a layer mask in a moment. Any kind of overblending that you do can usually be fixed when you get a little overzealous. So we're just going to kind of mix and match up in here. Anywhere you think her eye tone is getting kind of dark. Now, we're not going to completely erase it, because depending on who you're taking a picture of, a lot of darker skin tones near the eyes can also just be their natural skin tone, and you don't want to erase that because then it doesn't look natural and everything else. So we'll just go over here and kind of blend this eye a little bit. Depending on the angle and the lighting too is a big factor in how this plays out. So now you can do a couple of different things. You could just reduce the opacity, clean it up a little bit with a layer mask. You know, you just do this. You click the mask button down here, selecting this top layer. You paint out the areas. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. You paint out with B, the brush tool. You paint out the areas that it's a little too overzealous. Put the opacity back up to 100%. And then you could call this a day. You know, this doesn't look half bad. If you just did that, reduced opacity, and then kind of cleaned it up a little bit. That looks pretty good. That's something that you could probably roll with. But that's not quite what we want to do. So the first thing we want to do is get to know a feature called Blend If. So if we double click on that layer, and inside the layer style panel, there is this blending options at the top of this box. Before you click anything, I think a lot of people completely skip this panel because they don't use it as often. But down here at the bottom, you have what are called the blending rules. So if this area is dark, then you blend it. If it's light, you don't blend them together. And by holding Alt, you can grab parts of these arrows, either the whole arrow, to show where it's going to actually blend when it's only blending in the dark areas. But you can also grab the half of the arrow by holding Alt and then make it so that it mostly stays blended, but the lion's share of the blending, the natural kind of mixing together, happens down here in the darker tones. So now if you blend that together, it'll try to blend mostly in the dark areas like you see here. If I put on the overlay, you can see where it's a darker orange. That's where it's being blended more than in the lighter toned areas further down the cheek. So from here, we can kind of nudge down the opacity a little bit, and then that looks pretty natural. And then you could kind of play around with it from here. So that's one way to look at it, and we can actually clean this up so I'm not erasing her eyebrows. I hear people like their eyebrows to stay in one place. So we'll just clean this up a little bit, and that looks pretty good. You can see the difference here. Now, a little bit of a cleaner way to do this, something that I've done more, is you can use a curves layer, and you can see, you know, by looking right here around the eye, how bright do I need to lighten this before it starts to look proper. I can just put it like around here, maybe, like a little light level of lightening. And then I can select the white layer mask, hit Control-I to invert it so it's hidden. And now, with my brush tool selected over here, I'm going to dump the opacity. Well, actually, I don't need to dump the opacity down just yet, but if we select another soft brush from our panel over here, or make one, you can then go in here and you can use the white color to reveal this layer, and we can start to paint in a lighter colored skin tone, the same way that we were literally painting using her own skin color before. And so likewise, what we were doing before, we can do a blend if scenario. You can go into here, pull this down, and now you can see it disappear, and it only blends the darkest portion of her eye. Now, if you're still having some issues, you know, just go back through, clean it up with your brush, so that it doesn't look like you're literally drawing a heavy line across her face. And this looks great, actually. This looks pretty good. But if you're still kind of not happy with the color tone, because curves layers can kind of wonk out the colors of skin tones a little bit, here under the eyes it looks a little bit orange, you can make a new layer. You can just grab your brush, make it a little smaller, select a nice color of skin tone that you feel would blend well together between here. And on a new layer, you can just kind of color in that skin tone a little bit. And likewise, blend this on top of the other layer with Blend If. Once again, Blend If is a great tool. And we'll put it down here so that it's blending with the darkest portions. We can reduce that opacity just a smidgen. Add another adjustment layer here. Not adjustment layer, another mask, sorry. And you can color over the areas that you think still could use some attention to, you know, clean up the colors a little bit. And that looks pretty good, actually. So that's two ways that you can blend different colors to make it look more natural. And you have basically the idea here in general is just you're taking some type of layer that changes the color, either lightens it with a curves layer, you could even play with contrast, or you could play with a levels layer, and then you use the paintbrush to blend it together so that it looks natural and it blends smoothly from her cheek up into the area underneath of her eyes, and then kind of ends around the area of the eyelashes so it looks natural. So I hope this helps. This has been two ways to lighten the color of the area underneath of someone's eyes if they have dark under eye bags. And I hope you found this helpful. I've been your host, Larry. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and there's more Photoshop tutorials coming your way.